Hello, gasaholics. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got Gas, the Great American Auto Scene. Since 1990, your source for, information, a little humor, and car talk. I'm glad you could be here with us. All right, one of the more popular cars that I've noticed at the drag strip lately, and, they've been on the street for a long time, and you'll see why, is the Chevy 2 or the Nova, depending on which model designation was on the vehicle. Now, the Chevy 2 was developed in 1959. Now, a lot of people may not know this, but Ford one-upped Chevrolet. Yes, in my opinion, they did. Because when the compact wars started, although AMC had been in it for a long time, no one really noticed them to any great extent. They were one of the major manufacturers in the Detroit area, but the Rambler American, the Aeroflight, and others that they had come up with, although were good cars, just really didn't catch on like the Ford Falcon did. Now, in 1959, the big three, Chrysler, Ford, and Chevrolet, introduced compact cars to the public. It's a strange turn of events for the U.S. manufacturers who really had been building big cars most of the time. But Ford came out with a very conventional car called the Ford Falcon. This Falcon had a 144 cubic inch six-cylinder and a 170 as an option. Compact, good styling, drove pretty good for the time, and reasonable fuel mileage. I had a 1960 model when I was in high school, and 20 to 25 miles per gallon was not that difficult to achieve. I had a 3-speed manual. It was a 4-door sedan, but, hot rod ingenuity, and we fixed it up just a little bit. But it was fun, and it was economical, and it was a pretty decent vehicle, and later became the basis of what became the Mustang. Now, Plymouth came up with a Plymouth Valiant. That was a compact car, and it did the same thing. A 170 cubic inch six was standard. A 225 inch six-cylinder was optional. Very radical styling, though, for the original Valiant. Now, it also had an aluminum engine option. Well, the cylinder head was cast iron, but the block was aluminum. Very innovative at the time. They also offered the first power pack or performance version of the six-cylinder, and that was what they called the power pack. Bigger carburation, cast iron header, cam, neat little setup. I had one on a Dodge Dart. Now, the Dodge Dart, a lot of people think, was the first compact from Chrysler, or for Dodge. And no, it wasn't. Dodge Dart in 1959 and 60, 61, and 62 was a full-size stripped-down car, not a compact. The original Dodge compact was the Lancer. Now, they changed the name to Dart in 1963, and sales started to climb. The Lancer name went away for a number of years. Now, they brought it back on a Mitsubishi later on, but that's a whole different story. Chevrolet came out with the Corvair, a very radical car for the time. Independent front and rear suspension, air-cooled rear engine, six-cylinder, good fuel mileage. Performance-wise, it had options, including later on a turbo, but it handled differently, and people were not real comfortable with that. They sold well, don't get me wrong, but not in comparison as far as acceptance to the Plymouth, the Dodge, and the Ford Falcon, especially the Ford Falcon. So Chevrolet went to development and produced the Chevy 2 or the Nova, depending on the trim level. Now, this car went into design and was actually in production and available beginning in 1961 as a 1962 model. This was a more conventional car, front engine, rear drive. Front suspension was very similar to the Ford Falcon setup, spring over the top control arm, traditional front engine, rear drive. The base engine, though, was different from everybody else. It was a 4-cylinder, 153 cubic inches. 90 horsepower is what it was rated at the time. Mercury Marine adopted that engine, and it is still in production today, as far as I know. The optional engine was a 194 cubic inch six-cylinder. Powerful enough for the time. But Ford one-upped Chevrolet again, and in 1963, the Ford Falcon got the 260 V8. Now, Chevrolet followed suit in 1964 with the 283, 195 and 220 horsepower, depending on the option level, 2-barrel or 4-barrel. That was about as close to performance as they got. But, well, let's go into some of the history first. The first Nova production cars came out in 1961 as a 62 model, so let's just call it a 62. It's called the first generation, and it went through 1965 with very minimal changes. In 1966 and 67, the chassis or the base of the car remained the same, but it got a new body. So that's considered the second generation Nova. Also with that second generation Nova came the 327 350 horse, the L79 option. Now they had a 300 horse 327 before that, beginning in 1966, but now this car was muscular. And in 1966, it was a good-looking car. We see a lot of those, 66 and 67, still on the road, still at the drag strip, and they're very popular. In 1968, the third generation of the Nova came out, and it was a totally redesigned car. The only thing that remained constant, the four-cylinder engine, was still the base engine until 1970, when they abandoned the four-cylinder, because who the heck wants a four-cylinder in a car that big? And it really didn't get the car out of its own way, so the four-cylinder went away. Now, a lot of people think that was the Iron Duke. No, it wasn't. The Iron Duke was 151 cubic inches and a totally different design. Nothing is interchangeable. The Nova four-cylinder was 153 cubic inches, and it was basically the 194 six-cylinder with two cylinders locked off. The pistons, the rods, the rockers, all the same. The valve size, the same. Good engine? I've got one in my Hot Rod, and it's pretty stout. It does the job. The third generation Nova lasted until 1974, and the fourth and final generations came out in 1975. Good cars, fun cars, reliable cars, and here in California, they even used them as police cars for a while. Now, in December of 1959, it came out. It was they decided they needed a car to compete against the Falcon heads-to-head. The Corvair just wasn't doing it. So again, like I said, Ford one-upped them. They came out with a more conventional car. The V8 came out, a more conventional car. In 1963, the RPO Z03 became available, and that was the Super Sport in 1963 on the Nova. So again, it didn't come out when they first introduced it. The Super Sport package did little to amplify the performance because it was a trim package. You got bucket seats, a console, a floor-mounted shifter for its power glide. Really, not really that good, but, it made the car look cool. In 1964, they finally came out with the 283, like I said, although Ford had run up them with the 260 in 1963, the 289 in 1964. Chrysler even one-upped them. 1964, well, they didn't one-up them. The 273 became available in the Dodge Dart when it was introduced in 64. And the Valiant, the 273, 235 horsepower was the top horsepower rating. And that was a solid lifter 4-barrel car, and it was okay. Nothing spectacular. Now, the low weight of this Nova at the time gave it very good performance for the time. And again, you got to qualify this, for the time. And it was an 11-second quarter-mile vehicle, and or 13-second quarter mile, 0 to 60 in 11 seconds. In 1965, as I said, the 327 became available. Now, this was the first generation body, finally got some horsepower. So in 1965, they got the 327, 300 horsepower. Then they got the 327, 250 horsepower. The optional L30 was the 300 horsepower. It wasn't until a little bit later on they came out with the L79, the 350 horsepower, and that was in 1966. Now, the L79 option made that 327 really potent, and that was also the engine that came in the Corvettes, or you could get in the Corvettes. For 1968, they totally redesigned the Nova. It became a big car, a bigger car. Still a small car and in the compact range, but it was a cool machine. We see a lot of those at the drag strip today. But in 1968, the 327 went away. It was replaced by a 307 or a 350. And the SS model became more than just a trim option. You got the horsepower to go along with it. Now, they also had a 396 beginning in 1968. There were very few of those made. There was also the L78 option 396 with 375 horsepower. There were only 667 of those made available. So if you find one of those, you got yourself a rare machine. But I had a friend that had the 396 car, and it was cool. There were also people like Baldwin Motion and Nicky that were doing these upgrades and swaps as well back then. So if you can find one, baby, that is a rare beast. Now, they also had a 425 horsepower version of the 427. Very, very few of these came in, but they were there. Emission standards, safety standards, gas shortages are just some of the reasons of the decline of the muscle cars of the day. And then also we went to a net horsepower rating, which really confused people. Everyone, oh, the horsepower is down. No, the rating is down. The horsepower really didn't change all that much. But they went from a brake horsepower, which is the engine on its own, and rating the horsepower of the engine, to a net horsepower, which is the horsepower with the accessories on the engine. You lost about 20 to 30% of the horsepower. The horsepower really wasn't down all that much. Yes, emissions came in at about the same time, so it was a compounded issue. Lower compression, a little less horsepower, but the rating changed, and that was the biggest drop in horsepower. The Nova, still popular today. There were station wagons available. There was a convertible available, but those body styles didn't last very long. The convertible went through the first and second generation only, or the wagon, first and second generation only. The convertible, the first generation only, and only for a year or two. It wasn't real popular for some reason. So you don't find too many of them. If you see one, grab it if you can. Those are rare cars, the convertibles. The wagons were kind of neat. Better weight balance for a drag race car, and I've seen a few of them even autocross. Didn't do too bad, but the drag racers, you got more weight over the back wheels. Same reason the Mopar wagons did well in the stock classes, too. They were a little bit heavier, but they got the power to the pavement a little bit more efficiently. The Nova, well, a very popular car. And values, well, the Nova values have been climbing. And we'll take a look at that. But let's go over some of the basics of this. Now, the Nova sold quite well. And one of its banner years was 1974, believe it or not. In the height of the emissions and bumper standards, they sold 390,000 Novas in 1974. Now, 1973 was 369, 1972, 349. So it's always been a very popular car, except in 1971, sales started to drop and plummet. In 1969, which was a very good year, it was only 251,000. In 70, for some reason, sales picked up 315,000, but in 71, 194,000. They were down. Now, the original selling price in 1974 was $2,800. Yeah. By 1968, they started out at $2,200. And I can remember looking at one at a Chevrolet dealer when I got out of the service, and I was ready to go buy this thing. But you know what? It just didn't do anything for me. I loved the styling, but it was too big a car for me. It felt big inside. It was a comfortable car. But, you know, what can I say? My mind was in a different place, and I bought a van instead, and I went vanning. It was fun. I did that. All right, the Chevy Nova, a very good alternative to the more popular, on paper, Camaros, which didn't sell all that much better than the Novas, but the Nova, a lot less expensive car to buy. Let's see if we can find the pricing here and see what the actual auction values for these cars are right now. So we'll look at that. Just give me some time here. I'm doing some research quickly. And we'll get the base model Novas to start with. We'll start out with the oldest ones and see where we can come up with, or what we can come up with on those. So we'll start out with a 1963. For some reason, that's where they're starting on this system that I'm looking at. And they call them Chevy 2s. That was the base model. You didn't get the options with that. Now, they're quite valuable at this point in time. The low sale value, now these are national auctions over the last 10 years. $2,500 was the lowest sale price at auction. Now, that's not to say you can't buy one cheaper, because they're out there. There's no question about it. But when you take a vehicle to auction, it's usually in better condition than what you're going to find in the newspaper, local ads. So the lowest price, $2,500. The highest value a Nova has sold for, $121,000. This had to be one heck of a resto mod. The average in perfect condition, like I said, these are auction values. Barrett Jackson, Mecum, Gooding. These are the pro auctions, the big stuff. $25,000 to $121,000. That's the range in perfect condition. And this perfect condition, that's subjective to an extent, but these are cars that are show quality vehicles. The excellent, the average vehicle is anywhere between $17,500 and $25,000. A good general driver, get in it, drive it, enjoy it. Not perfect paint, not a perfect interior, no big amount of upgrades, somewhere between $14,000 and $17,000. In fair condition, $2,500 to $14,000. This is probably a car that is relatively original, unrestored. It's greasy, it's dirty, it runs okay, but it's going to need everything to get it to show quality. Can you get in and drive this one? It's a good possibility. So $2,500 to $14,000 on the low side. So when you look at all of these values, the average or the median price of a good Nova is $17,500. So if you're selling one or trying to buy one, think about that. The Nova, Chevrolet's compact, their actual true answer to the Ford Falcon. I'm Hot Rod Bob. You've got gas coming to you live. Well, if you're watching this already, it's live. Otherwise, hey, watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on Apple, iTunes, Sketcher, Blocker, a whole lot of places. Anchor FM. We're everywhere that your podcast can be seen. Like us, subscribe, check it out. And I'd love to have you follow on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you see GAAS, the Great American Auto Scene. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got gas. Have a great day, gasaholics.